Good morning, and welcome to the Daniel Baldwin Show. It is Monday, February 3rd, and the first thing I would like to do is send prayers and love and my thoughts to all of the people involved in the terrible collision over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., and to their families, their colleagues, and their friends. I just can't even imagine what that would be like to, just in an instance like that, lose a family member or a loved one. Terrible, terrible. So I wanted to take a look at this subject today because there's so much going out there right now, and talk about a few things related to it as our hearts are full with sorrow for these families. What we know about the plane and helicopter crash near Washington: 67 people were killed after an American Airlines jet and U.S. Army helicopter collided and crashed into the Potomac River. The collision on Wednesday that sent a passenger jet and U.S. Army helicopter plunging into the Potomac River near Washington is the deadliest air crash in the country in 20 years. The crash killed 67 people and left no survivors. The collision occurred in clear skies as the plane approached Reagan National Airport around 9 p.m. So the skies were clear. There was not any storms or evidently any visual obstacles weather-wise that we can say would have contributed to this accident. The moment was captured in several videos, including dash cam footage and a live webcam operated by John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts a few miles north. So this is now, the BWI is one airport which services Baltimore, Washington, older airport, then Dulles, of course, which is now kind of a suburbs airport because Reagan is there, and this is the one that is closest to DC. You mean to tell me that the clearest video of this accident is miles away on a webcam at the Kennedy Center? With the surveillance that must be done at this airport because of its importance and its proximity to an already 9/11 attacked Pentagon, that the clearest video we have of this collision, an inbound landing airplane and an Army helicopter, is miles away video, is what we're being told. Again, when you want to know why conspiracy theories start, when you want to know why people go, uh-oh, and that big question mark comes up like something else is going on here, is when now, Monday, this happened Wednesday. Now, Monday, I'm still only seeing in the news this Kennedy Center and a couple of people's phones, dash cams. There isn't surveillance being done at Reagan Airport. There aren't cameras all over Reagan Airport that were right there. There aren't cameras all along the Potomac that could have been confiscated, looked at, or whatever. This is the best footage that we're going to get? Question number one, question mark number one, right there. Big, 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 big red flag for me. The New York Times found that a controller working that night was performing jobs typically assigned to two controllers, handling helicopters in the airport vicinity and also instructing planes that were landing and departing from runways. Now I want you to remember this is very important. The New York Times found this out. The Army helicopter, which was operating out of Fort Belvoir, Virginia, with what officials described as an experienced crew, had been approved to fly a specific route that would have let them avoid the American Airlines plane, but it did not follow the intended route. Red flag number two. Why would an experienced crew have guidelines about how they were supposed to fly a route around one of the most important, busiest airports in the country and deviate from that plan? Why would they do that? According to 4 people who were briefed on the matter, but not authorized to speak publicly, the route it took was a half-mile away and higher in altitude, they said. So, now imagine in airspace, a half-mile with the strategic types of instrumentation that these weapons, these helicopters and these airplanes and so on have. A half-mile at that altitude is pretty far off. I mean, if you're an experienced crew member in this area, you know landmarks. You know when you're coming up on the Potomac River. You know when you're, so if you're a half-mile off, you're pretty far away from the Potomac River where that collision occurred. Or you're pretty far down or up the Potomac River if you're flying along the Potomac, that you would see things because you're an experienced crew that must know this route. Another red flag. There's just another red flag right there. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying it. So I have a problem a few times in that part of the report. Here's something that jumped out at me though. When they make mistakes, because remember something, there's what happened. There's certainly what happened, the facts of the matter, which God knows, in many cases, we never get. Okay, things called cover-ups. People want to cover their mistakes. People want to cover their liability. I mean, American Airlines is looking at a lot of people that have perished now as a result of this. And I hate to cut to the chase here, but someone's going to pay for that, literally. Lawsuits will be filed, and there will be, indemnities and insurance policies and all kinds of things involved in this accident. That people are going to, it's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's nothing compared to the fact that we lost young, talented people and lives, that will never see their children again. So please don't think for 1 minute that I'm not moved by this and I'm not saddened and burdened by it. I am. That's why I'm doing it as a story. There's lots of things to talk about. But the source of information that we get, the people that report to us what they want us or don't want us, more importantly, don't want us to know. Listen to this and tell me if anything jumps out at you about it. NTSB member Todd Inman told reporters Friday that investigators had interviewed at least one air traffic controller who was working when the crash happened. He said interviews were ongoing and that it was unclear how many controllers were on duty at the time. I need to sit in that for a second. I need you to sit in. Actually, I need to repeat it to you again. Please listen carefully to what this man reported. This isn't official. NTSB member Todd Inman told reporters, so he's reporting this, he's telling you, he wants you to know this, Friday, that investigators had interviewed at least one air traffic controller who was working when the crash happened. He said interviews were ongoing and that it was unclear how many controllers were on duty at the time. Now, there have already been, as I've told you already, behind closed doors, whispers that they were understaffed. So I'm the responding police officer at a shooting at 7-Eleven. And I get Frankie, one of the 3 people that were working that night. Frankie, who else was working? Marie was working the counter, I was working the back, Tommy was working the cleanup detail. They're unsure after interviewing someone who was working that night in the tower, how many other people were working in the tower. How could you be unsure of that? How is that not one of the first 5 questions? Your name, a few other things. Okay, what are your responsibilities? Who else was working with you that night? They're unclear. That doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel right. That feels like they're getting their answer ready. They're preparing their answer. That feels like somebody screwed up in the tower. Now, again, let me say something that I get a lot of mail about and people talk about. Am I a conspiracy theorist? Aren't we all a little bit now? I mean, aren't we all a little bit now? Because how many times it's been proven that the American government or that agencies or whoever it is that has a reason to lie or something to cover up or illegal activity or follow the money or whatever it is. I mean, it's just become so standard operating procedure to think that I'm not going to get the truth, that I have to dig, that I have to really pay careful attention, because I can't just turn my TV on anymore, my radio on, or go online and have someone say to me, even since online happened, I haven't been able to do this. But back in the day when I was a kid and I listened to the news, I was pretty sure it was true. I mean, I knew the government could probably lie about Vietnam or lie about Kennedy or lie about stuff. They could mislead us. They could cover things up. But I thought it was a much smaller group that was, and they would get caught. We'd catch them. We'd Richard Nixon or somebody. Maybe it wasn't directly him, but somebody who worked for him. Someone was going to get it, and we'd find out. There was enough integrity left. Now, it's straight agenda driven, I believe. So I don't know what to believe. When I see things or hear things that happen that they just don't feel right. They don't feel right. An experienced Army pilot and crew is flying at a higher altitude than normal and slams into, and make no mistake about it, this does not appear that a jet, a carrier jet coming in, an airliner coming in, landing at Reagan, looked like it got hit in the side by the helicopter. It did not look like the helicopter was flying, and at least for short impact, it looks like it happens like this, boom. But more importantly, is the reaction time. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. But let me just read on a little bit more, some things I was able to find that will help us come to whatever conclusion we decide, or you decide you want to come to, because you don't have to agree with me. And I don't always come up with a definitive conclusion. I try to report the evidence that I found. And do I shade it in the direction of what I believe happened? Usually I just tell you what I believe happened. You can take the evidence or whatever it is I'm reading you, and I'll support both sides. The helicopter was reportedly on a training mission at the time and was based at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Its radio transmitter was off at the time, and several attempts by the air traffic controller tower at Reagan National Airport to contact the aircraft were unsuccessful. Okay, let's digest that again for a second. Now, I don't know, and certainly I'm not a helicopter pilot, so, and I'm not a military officer. I don't believe that these pilots were under any duress, that they were flying some different altitude mission to accomplish something. They may have been practicing something that they were doing, but they were not engaged at the time. So we can eliminate that as a factor, like that they overlooked something because of the urgency of what they were doing. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's true. Its radio transmitter was off. So we're now to believe that that was turned off, obviously, while they're flying. Now remember, why do they have those off? Why do you have it? Because collision alarms, when planes and flying objects get too close to each other, will go off to warn you of something you may not see. In helicopters, they have the ability to turn those off because when they're flying a mission, they're flying in a pack, in such a formation that they're very close, and those would be going off constantly when they're flying in together. When they're flying on a mission together, that would go off. Why in God's name, if you're flying over a busy international airport with the importance that Washington, D.C. has, would you not have that collision alert equipment turned on and a transmitter so you could be spoken to by the tower? Another major red flag for me. That's a major red flag for me. The controller at the tower is trying to get a hold of you, and you're, for no reason that I understand at all, or any reason that you're going to prove to me, or any reason that you're going to make me feel good about, is turned off with an experienced crew who would know better than to turn that on. Not just that, but while they've been flying all the way to where they finally make the collision, they'd be hearing traffic conversations going on. They would hear that. And they would have been heard the tower trying to get a hold of them. So they would know better than to not have that off. That's another big red flag for me, man. something that you see, give me one, give me two, the altitude, the speed, the this, the that. And it's just starting to go boop, 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 boop. Like something's not right about this story. Now, I don't know that I have all the information. I don't even know anymore that I have the accurate information, but I'm going to tell you something. Something's not right about it. That's for sure. Many social media users are theorizing that there was a high-profile target on the plane, with many taking to Instagram or X to voice their concerns about the accident and share their theories. Allegations have surfaced suggesting that the helicopter seemed to chase a bombardier plane as it prepared to land, with some calling it a 1970-style assassination, as mentioned in the Daily Mail. So, again, I read that, and there's a lot of sensationalization in that, and there's a lot of stuff that obviously cannot be proven or disproved at this point. But I will say this: there was a situation that occurred in Russia. Experts react to the Prigozhin plane crash reveals about Putin and Wagner Group's future and the war in the Ukraine. Now, if you remember, there was a military officer in Russia, and he staged a very short-lived coup against Putin and took command over a military installation. Was praised by a lot of people in Russia to stand up to Putin and so on and so forth. And it was squashed pretty quickly. He was in Moscow, and I guess that met with Putin or whatever. And conveniently, this guy gets on a plane, and his plane gets shot down by accidentally entered some airspace or did something. But I'm not even going to get into all the details. But they dropped this plane and killed this guy, and it looks like they did it with intent, on purpose. They just killed him. Either it was a punishment for what he did, or he was never going to do anything again, but he's gone. And it sent a clear message to people underneath Putin what's going to happen if you do anything against me. So, is this one of those deals? Could you actually get Army pilots to go on a suicide mission and slam a helicopter into the side of an airplane because somebody that's on board the airplane they want dead? Now, they haven't listed all the names. They have listed a number of athletes and coaches and other people that were on the plane, but we don't have the full list. There's a couple of names they're not giving us yet. And they didn't give us the name of the Army pilot. First, they misidentified the pilot, and it was a transgender pilot who has gone online now and cleared the air, Joe. We'll just leave it at Joe. So Joe has made a statement but then made an interesting remark at the end of the statement and said there were no Army reserves on that helicopter. I thought it was very interesting that she said that. She said, not just I was not, but there were no, and I want to be clear to tell you that there were no Army reservists on that helicopter. What did that statement mean? I wonder if we're allowed to pull that up. Let's pull it up and show that comment. Let's pull it up and show her making that comment, because I think it's public news now. Okay, so take a look.
Interesting morning. This is Joe Ellis. I am a Blackhawk pilot with Virginia Army National Guard. I understand some people have associated me with the crash in DC, and that is false. It is insulting to the families to try to tie this to some sort of political agenda. They don't deserve that. I don't deserve this. And I hope that you all know that I'm alive and well, and this should be sufficient for you all to end all the rumors. I also have a statement. The Department of Defense is responsible for casualty notifications. There were no Virginia National Guard personnel on that Blackhawk that collided with the jetliner Wednesday evening. Thank you.
So now you see, if you look at the end, you see that she says there were no Army reservists. To be clear, There were no Army reservists on that helicopter. Was that a tell? I've looked up, is it possible to fly a Blackhawk remotely? And the answer is yes, it is. Now, of course, you'd be dealing with the 3 Army personnel that were on the helicopter. Could the control have been taken away from them, even if they were trying to fight it or do something? Because I want to tell you something that I observed, that they've talked about the black box that was on the helicopter. If you're going in your car, let's say you're just cruising along down the road, and a car just jumps out in front of you. Trust me, if there's a black box in your car, it'll show the brake go on, it'll show that the wheel turn, even just for a quarter of a second right before impact. You're gonna react to that. Let's say we buy the story that these guys were just flying along, their attention was diverted somewhere else. They don't see a jet. Do you know what the light at the end of a jet looks like? When it's approaching, that big light that comes on to illuminate the runway and show everybody they're coming in. I mean, it's like taking the most powerful, it's like taking a headlight and putting it right in your face on bright. I mean, that's what it appears to be even from further away. I mean, I've seen jets come in and land. It's blinding. So even if you're going sideways and you're coming in towards a plane, that plane out here, the light, the illumination of that light, how could you miss that? And remember too, let's take a look at this picture. This is a Blackhawk, the view looking outside at the Blackhawk, and see how much glass. You see all the glass right here? Okay, so it's quite a bit of glass for you to see through. Now, more importantly, take a look at the view the 2 in the front of the helicopter pilots have when they're looking out. Okay, so you see the glass up high and then all the glass in front. It's not like there's a limited thing. Now, they might have had night vision on, which would have restricted it some, but the night vision allows them to see all kinds of other stuff that they wouldn't see. And things that are hot, things that are cold, things that, just a bunch of other stuff in the technology. But still, there's a lot of glass there. This is like a windshield, on a car times 7. It's just huge. So I'm going to say that it's kind of hard to believe, even with the transponder turned off, even with the communications turned off. I mean, they're writing this story now for us to think, wow, imagine if all 9 of those things happened. It's adding up now to stuff that it doesn't wash from you when you say experienced. There's minus a guy in the tower. They turn the transponder off. The collision thing is turned off. They're not in communication. The pilot of the jet turns around and they see that he tries to lift the nose. The black box there shows that he tried to lift the nose. They don't know how many guys were working in the tower at the time. How the hell don't you know that? You should have known that the first 2 minutes you were in the room. And you've already interviewed one other guy who would have told you how many other guys were helping him, what he was doing. Something's not right. And you can't say that I'm making it up. This is what they're telling us. This is what they're telling you. This is what they want you to believe. This is why we are where we are right now as a country, because we don't know what the truth is anymore. We don't get the truth. We don't get the facts. We're not allowed to assimilate it, sit there and come up with a conclusion or say, hey, no, that's not right. Or this guy needs to get prosecuted. Or this guy needs to get fired. This guy should never be elected. This woman should never be elected. Whatever it is. Because we don't know the truth. We don't know the truth. It's all this big AI piece of crap. That's what it is. It really is. It's so sad because I don't even know I'm not 100% sure, because I don't want to insult these families and think that, and start bringing up stuff, was somebody involved in some kind of, was it a suicide run? Was it is this all just a terrible accident, that all these things are true and that just with the worst set of circumstances all piled up and caused this terrible collision midair? I don't know, but the more and more I look at, this sounds like a 1960s thing over an airfield or over, I remember there was one that was really bad over in Arizona. over one of the big parks. It might have been, I can't remember what it was. But I remember back in the day, there was a really bad midair collision in Arizona. And again, they didn't have this kind of equipment then. This is 60 years ago. Now this is like unheard of. There's a reason why for 20 years there hasn't been anything like this. And there's reasons why there shouldn't be anything like this again for the next 100. This should never have happened. Never, ever, ever with the stuff that we have. The Grand Canyon, I think it happened over the Grand Canyon, the accident that I was referring to. It was like a Pan Am flight or something, got crashed into 2 planes midair right into the Grand Canyon. Yeah, I can't really wrap my head around it because, and I wanted to report on it, and I wanted to talk to you about it, and I wanted to hear what you thought about it because it's so mind-boggling to think this in today's times this happened. When you look at the footage, remember something. The pilot of the helicopter doesn't flinch. There's no recorded. A helicopter can move really fast. It can dart down, dart over. It's not like a jet. This jet would have gone shh and tried to lift up. It would have been a very subtle, maybe a quick move, will be what they report. But the plane's not going to react to that. Not like the stick or the wheel in a helicopter. I mean, that thing can go brrr, and drop. There's no deviation. So when the helicopter was going with all that glass and all the things that it has capable of telling them, and the big light bearing down on them, and it doesn't move, does that not feel strange to you? Does that not make you say, an experienced helicopter pilot? I mean, even with night vision, they're taught to even more. They move their head constantly so they keep their eye on everything that's going on. So was there a fire on board? Did something happen that could have deviated their attention that long? Remember too, the jet's coming from a half a mile away, the headlight of this jet, you're gonna see bearing down on you. As you're coming, you're gonna see it off to the left. So, no deviation, no move, no swirl, flying at a higher altitude than it was supposed to, flying a half mile out of the space that it was allowed to be on. There's just too much going on here, man. There's too much going on here for me to just swallow and bite this whole story. I'm sorry. And the sad thing is, they ran and grabbed those black boxes, and they're in control of all of it now. The conversations that went on, I'm sure the jet box has the tower trying to reach the helicopter. Army Chopper 705, but I'm making these numbers up, but please respond, please respond. Now they would hear that. And even out far enough, the jet had to be looking at the helicopter. Certainly as it came in, I understand that there was audio from in the cockpit of them talking about whatever they screamed, they yelled, but the idea that they could have been in the helicopter and someone remotely took over. So the chopper's no longer responding to the stick. The chopper's no longer responding to the commands of the pilots. Is that possible? Is it possible no one was on the helicopter at all? I don't know what you do about covering up the pilots and the crew. I mean, did something terrible happen to them? Were they unconscious in the helicopter, and the helicopter was flown for the reason of assassination? Is there some other statement being made here? Is there something else going on here? Is there something that we're never going to know about these 67 people and why they had to die? I don't know. And I would never wish harm on anyone, obviously. I want to believe that this is a terrible accident. I do. I want to believe that it was an innocent reason and just a malfunction or whatever that caused the death of. There were kid athletes, skaters on this flight, and not that I keep emphasizing them like their lives were more important, but if I'm a 64-year-old man and I'm in a helicopter and I die, how many years left in my life are there or whatever, and compared to the innocence of a teenager with a thriving, exciting, coming back from Wichita, Kansas, experience in competition, and they're killed. If there's anything about this that was illegal or was premeditated, what a terrible crime. What a terrible crime, and for what reason? For what reason was this done? And how did they report put out a report that the wrong pilot, that this transgender pilot was flying this helicopter, which I'm sure she's very upset that her name is affiliated with this terrible accident because she wasn't on the bird. So that's just terrible too. The plane's altitude suggested the Army helicopter was flying above 200 feet, the maximum altitude for the route it was using. Yet the control tower's radar apparently showed the helicopter at 200 feet at the time of the accident, though that information has not been confirmed, Banning said. Again, the instrumentation that we're talking about, I would imagine, my knowledge of it is that this is pretty sharp stuff. They depend on this, and they depend on that information being recorded in these boxes so that it's pretty undeniable what's going on. Is it possible that an inbound plane is off by double its, or that the tower is recording it improperly, or one of the two obviously has this wrong? And if you're 200 feet short on your height, isn't that a problem? Obviously it was for the helicopter. But if the helicopter is cleared to fly at a certain height, and it normally flies at that height all the time, and that it was cleared, so there's a flight plan, and you're allowed to go the deck, they call it the deck, the height, the altitude, the ceiling that you're allowed to acquire, the highest point. If you're above that, and it's only 200 feet, and you're at 325, that's a significant difference. Now, a helicopter flying below a jet that's landing is only 125. That's a near collision. That's also a mistake. That would not be something that's too close. And I don't even know the law, and I can tell you that would be too close. For someone would be in trouble for that. Something happened that it would be that close to a collision. But is this what the tower was trying to communicate to the helicopter, and the helicopter's transmission was turned off? Were they saying to her, hey, you're too high? Hey, I don't know. But are we ever going to see those real recordings? Are we ever going to see the actual statistical information? I'm sorry, I don't believe we're going to. I don't believe we're going to. Particularly in the armies, we're not going to get that. The government is not going to release that to us now. There may be, 20 years or whatever, the same thing that's going on right now. The president released the stuff about the assassinations of JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King. And what's the first thing everyone jumps on is Martin Luther King's nightlife, or whatever he did extramarital affair-wise, and not the stuff we want to know about, not the stuff, that had anything to do with assassination. I was waiting for the smoking gun. I was waiting for. So let's smear Dr. Martin Luther King's reputation first thing out the gate, which I thought was just total crap. But the point is that we're not going to find out. They're not going to tell us, unless there's other footage, and there is. People are going to be combing through the footage now, and you're going to find there's going to be really clear footage of this. There's going to be this helicopter just went slammed right into the side of this plane. And again, I'm trying to do all the math. I'm trying to add everything up. That they're claiming, just based on what they've already leaked out, is bad enough for me to say, come on, man. There was another thing that came out about this that I read that I'm going to take the time. It's a longer piece, but if you could be patient with me and listen to this, I was quite taken aback by it, and I wondered if you would be too. You're way too overdressed to be on my plane. I got on an American Airlines plane in Harrisburg en route to North Carolina, Charlotte. It was a very warm, late summer morning. I'm old school, remembering the days when folks used to get dressed up to fly. Admittedly, I was probably wearing way too much for a hot day. The flight attendant stood inside the open door of the regional jet, and as soon as I passed him, he stopped me with his huge grin and pointed at me. He pointed at everyone else and bellowed, "You're way too overdressed to be on my plane." I laughed, he laughed, and everyone smiled. After we all were seated, he made it a point to stand right next to me while he was doing his pre-flight announcements and made numerous references to all of his new overdressed friend heading to Charlotte. He made every passenger on the full flight feel like they were his newest buddy. As I got off the plane, I made it a point to say goodbye and asked to see his name tag. He smiled and held it out to me. It said Ian. I was headed to Charlotte to work on a new book on customer service with my dear friend Jeffrey Gitomer. Jeffrey is an amazing author, speaker, and all-around lover of great stories and life. He's been my mentor for years and asked me to come down to work on a business-oriented book based on my experiences. We spent the day together, dropping ideas and plans and catching up on our lives. I returned home and wrote American Airlines customer service and asked if they could put me in touch with the flight attendant, as I was hoping to photograph him and tell his story in the upcoming customer service book. The reply email was very quick. In the interest of privacy and safety, we have a strict privacy policy regarding this dissemination of customer information. With that in mind, we are unable to transmit information or messages between customers. I am sorry to disappoint you, but hope you can appreciate our commitment to our customer privacy. I wrote the representative a few more times, and each time she wrote back the same silly policy. By the time I had Googled him and found his social media profile, I thought of contacting him directly, but had no interest in putting him in an awkward spot with his employer. I let it go. The book is still in progress. Friday morning, I spotted a new Facebook memorial post about the identity of the crew of the American Airlines plane that crashed in Washington. I spotted his face and still thought it could be someone else. Within seconds, I found a video of him greeting another passenger with a hearty laugh and smile. The voice was identical. It was Ian Epstein. Google his name, read what others had said about him. He treated every passenger on every flight the same way. He made flying fun. He was the smiling face of American Airlines. I truly wish I had gotten him in front of my camera. Damn you, AA, for your rules and have no exceptions. Life is short. Thank you, Ian. You were an amazing man. So here's a guy who works his career as a flight attendant, and people remembered him. People remembered his way. People remembered his service, his smile. He was remembered, and he perished in this flight. And I was touched by that post, so I thought I would share it with you. So God bless you, Ian. Welcome to heaven. You earned your spot. We will wait for more and more information to come out about this flight. Many times when I come to you in these podcasts, I come to you with topical things that are in the news now. A lot of it has been political, obviously, with the election and the newness of President Trump and his administration. But I also look at storms. I also look at anything, crashes like this, stuff that makes the news. A great story would be nice. A beautiful story of someone saving someone's life or something would be welcome to be the spotlight of the story that I do a podcast about. Sadly, it's this flight. There was another flight in Philadelphia, private plane that crashed, killed a child on the ground. It's not that story doesn't have merit or doesn't deserve to be mentioned, or the lives that were lost aren't as important or anything like that. It's I look at things that happen and I look at how I feel about what I hear. I try to digest what's going on, and I think to myself, does this feel right? Is this accurate? Because what I want to do with you, and I want to do it together, I want to use our voices. I want people to think. I want people to look at what's going on around them. And we don't have to always agree. We don't. I mean, obviously, look at the election. We don't always agree. There's people that watch my show that can't stand me. There's people that write terrible things about me. Terrible, terrible things. When all I'm trying to do is serve God and voice my opinion. The things that you hear on this show are my opinion. The facts that I report are reported to me as facts. I wasn't there. I didn't see the plane. I wasn't in the helicopter. I wasn't in the cockpit. I wasn't on the ground and watched it. I'm just telling you just like what you know. But I do, I'm a relatively smart guy. I can figure things out, and I can decipher through what looks like BS or what doesn't make sense or wasn't or isn't what they tell us is supposed to be. And so you kind of get through it. You kind of look at it sometimes and you go, well, that doesn't make any sense. Don't report to me that it was an experienced crew, because I'm an experienced actor. I'm an experienced father. I'm experienced at a number of things. I'm an experienced athlete. So when you tell me something happened on a baseball field or on a football field or on a wrestling mat or on a basketball court or on a golf course, and I go, well, that's illegal. You can't do that. You can't touch the ball and advance the ball, and you can't. And I'm going to know rules. I'm going to know regulations. I'm going to know history on it. I'm going to know when they changed rules. Lots of different stuff. All of it? No. Do I know enough about it? You're damn right I do. Am I an expert? On some of it, pretty close. You know, I'm not experienced with it. Am I an expert in this field? No. No, I'm not. No, there are. That's why I go to military personnel that I know, actual pilots. I even did an opening statement and called it an Apache helicopter and a jumbo jet. It wasn't an Apache. It was a Blackhawk. I was excited about this story, not excited, happy, but I was a little overreactive. And I said, you know, and how do you get on an Apache? I've been on those before. Actually, I've been on a Blackhawk and an Apache, both in films that were military films. And so I've been on both. Do I know how to fly one? No. But when I call guys that know, and I say to them, what were they doing? And they say, well, you know, I don't know. I wasn't there either, but it's uncommon. This is something that's not a common occurrence. It's very common that they fly in and around important airports. Certainly very common that they fly in and around Washington, D.C. airports. They could have been doing some kind of a training exercise, which is what they're now saying. But to have the ceiling raised and them not know it, they would know visually looking down, if they're an experienced pilot, that they're flying 125 feet higher than they should have. They would know that. That's a big difference. That's a big difference. That's 40% higher than they should have been. They know where the water is. They know what's going on. They got a whole crap load of glass. They're looking down. They got lights on. They got all kinds of stuff. They would know that. And they should have instrumentation that would tell them that. All that was bad. The lights went out. The instrument panel wasn't working right. And they couldn't tell perception-wise that they were flying too high. Oh, and by the way, there's a big jet on the way. We're about to slam into the side of it. And we don't know where that, we're not even going to react. We're just going to hit it, blow it out of the sky. I'm sorry. I don't think that's possible. Now, is it impossible? No, which is a contradiction to what I just said. I realize that, but you get what I'm trying to say. I just don't see it. I don't see it. And it makes me suspicious that something else was going on, or that there was some other criteria or agenda or something that could happen. Or someone just flat out lying to us about the circumstances of this. I don't know. I know 67 lives are gone, and I don't think I know what happened yet. I don't think I know. And they contradict themselves, and I'm tired of it. I'm so sick and tired of sitting here and looking at everything that comes at me now, I take with a grain of salt. I don't believe anything anyone says anymore. It has made me very jaded in that respect. In business, I find myself, I remember there was a situation that happened with me where I was told, you're in, blah, blah, whatever it was. It was early in my career. And my wife, who's a brilliant lawyer, Notre Dame Law School grad, very, very smart woman, She would say to me over and over again, make them put that in writing. No, I don't want you to get it in an email. I want you to get a contract sent that I can review the contract. She's a corporate lawyer. And I'm going to go through it and I'll redline it and we'll send it back. And then I want it signed. And I grew up, my father was a school teacher and a football coach and a rifle coach and a track coach. He was a, guy's guy, really well liked, nice man. And he taught us, you look him in the eye, say your first and last name. Hi, I'm Daniel Baldwin. Nice to meet you, sir, ma'am. Make eye contact, shake your hand firmly. Don't overdo it. Don't shake someone's hand like a wimp noodle. Shake their hand. Look them in the eye. You say you're going to be there at 3 o'clock, be there at 2:55, be there at 2:50. Show them that you want it. Always be on time. Always be ready. All those kinds of things. So have I ever slacked off? Have I ever broke some of those rules? Not the handshake introduction one very often, but have I ever been late or yeah, I was a kid. I'm never like that now. No, for many, many, many years, I'm a stickler for rehearsal, preparation. I'm the guy that gets up with a 9 a.m. flight. I get up at 5. I'm 40 minutes from the airport. I'm up at 5. I have coffee. I'm preparing my documents. I'm re-looking at stuff, and I got to fly. I don't even have to work that day. No, I'm a prep freak that way. So, what's wrong with this? Why can't I buy this? Why can't I buy that this amount of stuff has stacked up and suggest to me that there's something we don't know? Is it just that I've been inundated with this kind of nonsense now since, Nixon, and it just keeps getting worse, and now it's just expected. It's expected. See, that's part of when I said I'm going to get back to, in the very beginning of this podcast, I said, and I'll share with you what I mean. It's expected now. I literally expect it to be lies. I expect that we're probably never going to know, and then you're going to have to pick a side based on how much evidence is uncovered, based on how many statements you can get, based on does witnesses start turning up dead. That crazy stuff that you really have to consider. Well, God, he invented the thing, and he was on site, and his car ended up driving off a cliff. And you're like, but doesn't he live by that cliff? Doesn't he know that turn is coming? Doesn't he know that he shouldn't be doing 75 miles an hour? Well, what's that hole in the side of his head that they found? Was that a rock that he hit when the car crashed? There's just too much going on that's underhanded and dirty, and money trails and promises and it's crazy. Vaccinations. I just we live in a world where I've said to my wife before, is this really what we want? Because I'm a 64-year-old father now of a baby. My son Bat is 19 months old, 20 months old now, 20 months old. And do I want to raise him here? This is the greatest country on earth. This is the most powerful, amazing, diverse country in the world, in my opinion. I can't imagine becoming who I've become anywhere else but in America. But boy, is it different. Boy, is it so different here now. I had a conversation. I'm going to wind up with this. I know it's off the subject, but I just want to put it out there. I had a conversation with a guy whose kid was assaulted. And I was bringing up to him, he has his kid was in preschool. And my wife and I have talked about putting our son in preschool, at what age, and will we do that and everything. And I said, I see all the reputable places that you pay $20,000 and all these astronomical fees to go. And I said, I don't think I want to send him anywhere. I think I just want to wait till he's in kindergarten. If that means that we have to do the do here at home, then that's what we'll do. I don't trust it. I don't think that the qualifications to become somebody who teaches at that school are as stringent. And I think that they made it easier to become school teachers because they don't pay them enough money. So a lot of people, become teachers, not for a full career, but as a sideline to get a job initially, and then they break out into the workforce in a different way. So my confidence in the level of educator in many public schools now, particularly in the inner cities, is at a low for me, opinion-wise. That's not saying that all teachers are bad or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there are a bunch of people in there doing it that just don't care. They don't care like they do. My father was a teacher. My mother was a teacher. I know what it is to see a parent who's a teacher that really cares about their job and cares about their kids and cares about. But here's what came up about when I grew up and growing up now. You're the neighbor, the 45, I'm going to bring up a specific person without saying their name, the 45, 50-year-old guy who still lives at home. The father had passed. The mother was still there. She was in her 70s, 75. And this guy had been accused by a couple of, junior high school, young high school girls of exposing himself in a car. The cops weren't called. Nobody called the cops. My father and two other fathers of girls that were involved in this incident that happened in front of the deli by my house in Massapequa, Long Island, New York, knocked on this guy's door and explained to the parents, the mother, he's got to go. We're not going to call the cops. He's got to go. And he's there, and he goes, I don't know what. You have to move. You have to get out of here. You have to go. And had that happened where any of our parents were near it happened, that he yanked him out of the car and beat the crap out of him. And there would not have been a cop at my door for knocking some guy out for exposing himself or getting involved with an attempt to seduce a minor girl or boy or anything for that matter. We would have handled that ourselves in my neighborhood. If that word got out to the guys I grew up around, if that word got out to Tony Rendy or Craig McCarthy or Greg Fainer or the guys that I knew, we'd have lined up in your front yard and you'd have been done. You'd have been toast. If you touched one of the boss family's kids or the Bevilacquas or, I could name after name after name of people from my neighborhood that if we had heard you touch one of them, me, Alec, my father, whoever, Billy, we'd have been at your door. We would have policed it ourselves. Now I'm going to go to jail for knocking the guy out that touched my next door neighbor or my sister. They have more rights than we do. They have woke rights. They have, you can do and say whatever you want. I can't bring God and the Pledge of Allegiance into a grammar school, but I can bring a transgender poetry reader in, cross-dressing in front of my children and reading poetry and stories that promote transgenderism. First of all, look at the double standard of that. You're saying you should have the right to do that, but I'm having my religion and my patriotism removed, and you're saying I can't do it. Not allowed. You're forcing your opinion on these children or whatever the reasons why you don't want that in there. You don't believe you love America, you don't love God, whatever your story is. I support you to have your right to believe whatever, practice whatever you want to. Just, you don't have to bring it to my door. It's not going to be in my house. It's not going to. That's not what I believe my path with my Savior, Jesus Christ, is. But for you to come and tell me I can't, and then you can put your agenda on the table and bring it into the school, isn't that a double standard? I'm okay with saying, what has happened to this country? What's happened here? What's wrong with this country that I have to look at what I hope, and I meant to say this before, I hope is a terrible accident over the Potomac River. But I'm so conditioned now to look at everything and the information that's coming out and say, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't seem like it's right. So what really happened? I'm so conditioned to think and be suspicious of everything now because of how much has happened in this country that is so crazy. If someone does something that is illegal or does something totally inappropriate to my kid, I'm not calling the cops. Not at first. I'm not. If I'm there when it happens, you don't think I'm coming out of the car? And you're going to hold me, particularly, it's just like when someone puts their hands on you. My father used to say to us, I don't care what happens. If he touches you, green light. Touches you, pushes you, whatever. Now, can you get away with someone saying some slur to you? Can you get, no, he didn't go for that. He wanted it to be that the person put his hands on you. Then you had the absolute green light. Even that today. Did you not think that you were going to be overpowering him based on your size, based on your training, based on your, but he touched me. He hit me, or he swung at me, or no. The knife comes out and the gun comes out, and I drop him in my driveway. He's trying to carjack me. He had a knife. Did he come toward you with a knife? Did you feel that your life was threatened at the time? Did you feel... You came at me with a knife. Game's over. No, you got to be really careful. You got to be really careful about how you handle yourself, because the times have changed. There's a lot of lawyers involved. There's a lot of people that don't see it the way you see it. Even when you own a gun and someone else has a gun, you got to make sure when that hand goes in the coat and the hand comes out, that there's a gun in it and that it's aggressively being aimed. I got to wait for it. Cops have to wait for a gun to be aimed at them before they can fire. Jesus. Thank God I'm not a cop. I'd have been locked up a lot of times for what those men and women have to go through, man. I don't envy that situation at all. I really don't. Well, sorry, I strayed off the subject a little bit because I have a lot of feelings about how we're getting this information right now and what we're being asked to believe, and more to come, and I'll come back and report as it comes out. I think what's going to happen, though, if I can give you this prediction, I think you're going to find that there's going to be new footage that, and if we are able to get someone to leak this story a little bit. Remember I said that the fire thing out in California is not over. It's not over. That's too big a one. That's too big. Someone's going to tell something. Someone's going to say something. Someone's going to see something. Someone has something already that's going to change that story dramatically, in my opinion. I don't know how long it could be covered up for, but there's no question in my mind that there was arson involved, in my mind, arson involved in those California fires with a big government agenda. Now, how deep that goes or where that goes, I don't know. This one in Washington, D.C., a lot of stuff, like I've told you, is not adding up. So I want you to write in. I want you to post on the shorts. I want you to post on the story. Please tell me what you think. Now, I had one guy say to me this morning, you know what, Daniel, I was a pilot. I flew Blackhawks. You're wrong. You're looking for something that's not there. It's very possible. Again, for the sake of humanity, I want that to be true. I don't want anyone to be dead from this terrible accident. It's a little late for me to worry about that because it's happened. 67 lives are gone. But do I want to find out that this happened and it wasn't some terrible collusion or a murder for hire or whatever the hell, it's going to turn out to be? Yes, I would rather have it just be that we learned something from this before it's 500 lives in a giant plane, or some other terrible situation that happens where the plane goes down and hits a apartment building that collapses the building or whatever, which, you get where I'm going with this. So would I rather have it be something that we learned from and that these lives weren't lost in vain, and we could grow from, and possibly something good could come out of it in safety or whatever? Yeah, that would be the best possible scenario by which to end this story. But like I said, when it's one, when it's two, when it's three, when it's five, when it's six different red flags that go off that aren't making sense, I'm sorry. My experience, strength, and hope is such that I'm very suspicious. I am. I'm very suspicious of this accident. So let's wait to find out more, and let's wait to see what we know. But post, please post, and follow, subscribe. You know, I'm not one that likes to say all that stuff all the time, but you know, if you can get the podcast out to other people and bring people to come right in. I'd like to start to have people on the show. I'd like to take some call-ins or take your emails. I can read your emails on. So I have one, John, I don't know if I'm going to say this, Laurentano. John Laurentano in California asks me this question. I should probably start wearing glasses. John Laurentano says, hey, Baldwin, do you believe that lasers are involved or that they're using lasers to start these fires? Take a look at Hawaii. Take a look at California. So, well, you know, they started showing these planes that have the capability with this gyro thing that's in the front to shoot these lasers. And there's also been this thing about the blue color that, you know, and the problem is the information that you get, you know, so you look at it and it says, yeah, there's no science, that's no, but then you're looking at houses that were the rooftops of them in Hawaii, and this is footage that they have, that people started painting the top of there. Some of them were blue tiled already. Some of them they painted before the attack, if it was an attack. They painted the tops of the houses blue. They painted different things, and things that are green, like evergreen, and the trees in Malibu, the neighborhood is burnt to the ground, and the trees are perfectly standing still. How is that possible? And if the laser hit and the house is already on fire, why would that, from all the other fires that I've seen there before, because I lived there, would the trees not have burnt? It's so bizarre, like I can't figure it out. But this blue thing, there was a Volkswagen bus that some surfer chick or whatever had in Malibu, and this whole hillside is wiped out, and her van is there. A car's right near it, all burnt out, and this van is fine. So I don't know what to say, John. You know, again, it's just like the airplane incident. I want to believe that we are not capable of burning down most of the Pacific Palisades and that much history of the Pacific Coast Highway and all the people that were affected and the lives that were lost and the things that occurred as a result. Is it possible that because of this smart city program that they have by 2028, that someone actually lit this place up in hopes to burn it down, to build and rebuild and get it ready for the Olympics and the different agendas that California has? When you look at the number of red flags again involved in that, John, the reservoirs were empty. When you turn the hydrants on, they weren't working. They stopped 60 Oregon fire trucks from coming down to help assist in the fire because they didn't have the proper smog check on the trucks to drive in the state of California. Let me please concentrate. And I don't mean to speak to you condescendingly. I'm trying to dramatically emphasize something to you. The place is burning to the ground. Do you think anyone cares if the truck has been properly smog checked, that the state of Oregon is sending down to lend a hand, one of our neighbor states just north of California, and they stop the trucks, this entourage, this procession of firefighting equipment, and don't let them come down when the fires are raging because of a smog check? That the water is controlled by this one family, quite a bit of the water. But more importantly, that I pointed out, John, is that there was an ocean, it's called the Pacific Ocean, that the water could have been freely pumped out of that and pumped and used all over the place. I mean, even a small pump is going to be enough to put out and pump the water into the fire trucks. Or seawater. No one cares where they use the seawater. If you damage the truck because using the seawater, whatever the excuse they're going to use for it, it's ridiculous. There was lots of water. There was an ocean. These were occurring. The fires that we're talking about along PCH were occurring on the water. It's all burnt out, everything right there. The water was right there to use. So what would that excuse be? I've yet to get anybody to explain that to me. Why we didn't use that water. Why this much readily available water to put out a fire wasn't used. So are they using lasers to start the fire? I didn't see it. But I've seen, and I can't tell with AI now, with all the stuff, the misinformation, I can't tell. You know, is that manufactured by somebody else, or is that real footage of a green thing going like that, and it's a fire starts? They have satellite footage of supposedly 3 fires starting almost simultaneously at the beginning of this terrible fire thing. Is that real? I'm told, no, that's not real. That's AI. That's not the actual NASA satellite. Well, where is the NASA satellite footage? NASA strip photographs the entire country constantly around the clock. So there has to be a strip photograph that shows that area, or you know, all of Los Angeles, if you wanted to, for that matter, within 20 seconds, you know, or 2 minutes, 5 minutes, every 5 minutes, it's whatever it is. Where's that footage? Where's the actual NASA release? Hey, let me put this to rest. This fire didn't start till 3 hours later. This fire didn't start till 2 days later. This fire, or did they all start within 10 minutes of each other, simultaneous, to draw all the firefighters in different directions and make it even harder to put out? Did they let the reservoirs run out? Did they not replenish those reservoirs? Did they not use the ocean water because they were ordered not to? Because they wanted all of this to burn down so that they could start this new aggressive building progress and project in California. Did the governor know anything about it? Is Gavin Newsom done as we know him, if they can prove that? I don't know. I mean, obviously, he's the governor of California, and he's just, you know, wants to rebuild it as quickly as possible, and let's get everybody back on their feet, and let's get California back going. But I want to believe all that. I want to believe that he's a legit guy and that he would never do something so terrible. I do. I want to believe that. I really do. I want to believe that Anthony Fauci and that the Department of Health and that the billionaires that own the pharmaceutical companies, you know, they didn't lie to us about a vaccine that isn't really a vaccine. They didn't add chemicals into the vaccine. They're going to make us sick for years to come so they can continue to make ridiculous amounts of money. That officials that said that the vaccines were safe and were absolutely necessary, and forced workers and military personnel otherwise lose your job if you don't get them, that they haven't damned them and damned their unborn fetuses and blah, 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 blah. I want to believe all of it. I want to believe all of it, but I don't. I don't believe all of it. There's too much evidence steering us in other directions that tell us a different story. So here we are with a helicopter smashing into the side of an airplane and dropping and killing everyone involved in the collision. And the answer is, I don't know yet, but it doesn't seem right. It doesn't feel right. And if it doesn't feel right, I need to talk about it with you. Write me your questions, write me your statements. Tell me you are amazed at how great the show is, or tell me that the show stinks, because I don't care. Let's talk about it, and maybe come on the show or write me a question. Thanks, John, for your question in California. And we have come to the time where I do something that is not always popular and with everybody. Some it's very popular, and that's I pray. So if you are not one that is an advocate of prayer, then it is probably time for you to turn off your dial. And if you are, here we go. Lord God, we ask for your mercy for the victims of this terrible plane helicopter crash over the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. We ask that you welcome all 67 souls into heaven, God. And we ask you, Lord, to guide and to help heal the wounds of the families, the colleagues, and the friends of all those who have died. And Lord, we ask you to give us the truth. Let us find out exactly what happened so it never has to happen again when it comes to this terrible crash. But to the families, we say, God, please, Lord, help them heal from this devastating loss. In your name we pray. Amen. So that's the show for today. I'll talk to you on Friday, and hopefully maybe we'll do a roundup show where we can kind of talk about RFK and what's going on with the California fires and any more information we have on this. Talk a little bit about the administration, what's going on. We won't maybe make it one subject. We'll kind of tie some things together. But please do send in your questions, send in your thoughts. I'm really interested in hearing it, and I love being able to. If you do that, I want to be able to quote your name and where you're from so we can credit you with the question and respond directly to you. God bless you. Have a great day.